Look, now we see the rover centering on the lake. The rover gets the coordinates of where the camera image is, and the rover will adapt to the center of it. Then the middle center will trigger the lake and measure the temperature. The temperature is measured. So we've measured 26 degrees. The rover will return from its lake and go and find the new lake. Now the lake is out, so it won't find it anymore.
Just live on Mars. So can you tell something about the decisions taken to come up with this radical mechanics design? So what was the deciding factor to go for this particular design?
As I just told, the other groups were making use of a differential. So when you saw that when the rover touched with only one of the middle driven wheels, it couldn't move anymore because the transmission is broken. Yeah, and as we do, we wanted to steer very short so we can move on the place, so you won't have a very big radius.
Small turning radius. It's also a lot smaller and lighter than the other rover, because our bigger rover was a little slower, bulkier, couldn't make sharp turns. And this one, and you can turn on the spot, of course.
Yeah, no,
it will not.
That's what's happening now.
It is making a 360-degree turn to see if there are any lakes outside its current camera image. After it has turned around and hasn't found any lakes, it will go on a roaming mode. And if it does find a lake, it will try to approach it.
Do you still use the light sensors when it's turned 360 degrees?
We have turned it off because when you are turning around, there's no chance of falling off a cliff because we're turning around our own axis. And turning around in a directional light source will cause the shadow under the light sensors to turn, and you'll get a sharp gradient from light to dark passing underneath the light sensor, and that might trigger it. So we turn it off on purpose.
Interestingly, the ground station has been restarted and the robot is still roaming, so that seems to work.
Yeah.
Now it finds the lake.
Yep. Keeps turning.
It should be turning now. Very nice.
So was that luck that it all of a sudden stopped turning? Was that pure luck?
It turns exactly 360 degrees, and if it finds a lake, it can turn back.
Okay, so it makes the whole turn,
yeah.
And it turns back?
No, well, it breaks into the loop, and it probably saw a lake to the right. So it turned around, didn't find the lake while turning, but after turning around, it found it to the right and turned back.
So why did it skip this lake? Okay.
Misschien vindt hij hem nou.
We got view on the camera.
Yeah, we got coordinates.
We got coordinates and view. No, yeah, no, yeah, it's fine. No, camera's off. Yes. No coordinates. Yes.
You set your practice with 2 rovers to speed up your development. How did you manage the code written on both, and how did you sync the code that it has been written?
How do you mean? Sorry, I don't
Well, the edge detection software for both rovers is exactly the same, so we could share that between 2 rovers. The only actual difference is the steering, because of course the tank-style rover can steer on the spot, while the larger rover, to center on a lake, for example, it has to make an S-curve. So only the lake approach and the steering are different. and we could use the same architecture for both.
Yeah, that's right. So can you explain why it is turning and driving separately? Why is it not doing it simultaneously?
Because if you're driving backwards, you can fall.
Well, also because we are turning and driving, of course, with the same motors, and we only want one function to access the motors at the same time. Of course, with a more complicated driving function, you could drive and steer at the same time, but it's more simple this way.
But you're using two motors for the steering and driving?
Yeah.
Right, so you could just steer one...
one in forward, one in reverse, and you'll turn. Like a tank.
So you could have one motor in reverse a little bit more than the other one, and then you have...
Yes, that's possible.
A bend, right?
Yeah.
But the main reason that we did choose this is if we want to find a lake, then we can just stay at one point and turn at its axis, and then you can find it.
Of course, but now it is driving towards the lake and it still has to stop and turn. And it keeps on driving in a straight line. So you could also make a nice bend.
Yeah, but we don't know the cliff, we don't know where we are, so why should we drive in a bend? Because there's just a much chance that the lake is right in front of you that it's in a bend.
Yeah, but you could drive towards the lake according to the coordinates it finds, right? I don't see
oh yeah, you can make a conversion. You know, if you have the coordinate, then you can find the path. Yeah,
right, you need some path for this.
Yeah, but we found it was more robust this way. If you can just, at each time, check again if you are at the same coordinates, and then just turn first and then drive right on, because then there is much less chance that you will miss a lake. If there's some problem in the conversion, or is there, the motors are, we only have one rotation sensor now on one of the motors. So, and it's not guaranteed that both motors will drive exactly the same speed. So if you make a bend, it's less accurate that you know where you're going than if you have constant feedback while turning right your axis. So the main thing is we want to have feedback every time instead of just once checking it and then driving towards it. And it takes a little bit more time, but it's more robust this way.
How did you check that you're actually turning 360 degrees?
We calibrated that. We just did a couple of tests and checked whether how much it was turning. We did a test with, we made a tape on the ground, and then we started turning the light sensor, and then we turned completely, you could see the light sensor again. So that was exactly 360 degrees, and then we checked how many rotations that was, and that way we just used that a fixed number to run from. And it's not really necessary to be exactly 360. It's not a problem if it's 350 or 370.
So I see something happening here. I see it driving backwards, taking a bend to the left, and driving backwards, taking a bend to the right. Obviously, in this case, that was not the best solution, because you stay in this position probably for a really long time.
Yeah. Could have been yeah, this is some kind of worst case scenario. I think the option we've chosen. So.
But it can also be a real deadlock. Of course, there will always be some small deviations, so maybe in the end it will come out of it, but
sure.
You don't know exactly. So, with respect to time, I think the mission is over, but still very well done. Too late, so.
Staat erop.
It's your turn.
Ja.